Today's guest is a former music teacher turned singer, songwriter, musician, composer and record producer who found fame with new wave music rather than the classical piano that he was trained in. Formed in 1977, his band, the Thompson Twins, went through numerous lineup changes before settling on the iconic trio that we all know, who enjoyed huge success, selling over 3 million albums, with hits like Lies, Love on Your Side, Doctor Doctor, We Are Detective, and of course the iconic Hold Me Now. Such was their impact and allure, they were joined by Madonna on stage at Live Aid in Philadelphia in 1985. They later became a duo and lived in Ireland for a time. They disbanded in the 90s and moved into new projects. In 2000, our guest produced and played keyboards on the studio album Mix by the New Zealand band Stella and won the New Zealand Producer of the Year award. In 2002, he formed the dub-style International Observer. He was part of the Holy Water Project, which marries Indian classical music with electronica and video. It was formed to highlight the issues of water pollution in the Ganges. He's collaborated with astronomer and visual artist José Francisco Salgado to form an audio-visual ensemble combining music with photography, video and motion graphics. He's scored numerous films, and in 2018 he released his first solo album, Science Fiction. Since 2014, he has brought the incredible music of the Thompson Twins back to the live scene, winning Classic Pop Magazine's Best Live Show Award in 2016. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Mr. Tom Bailey. Hello, Tom.
Thank you very much. What an introduction. I feel like lying down after that.
Everyone always says to us, when we ask out for questions, that everyone's like, well, what's he been doing? And obviously I had, 50 questions to filter down for this interview. So we had to cover what you've been doing a little bit as an overview. So
that's right. I mean, it's one of those things that when you're in the kind of mainstream pop world, if you do anything else, people just assume you're sitting by a pool somewhere drinking cocktails because it doesn't make it on the headlines, or get into the charts or something, But of course, yeah, I've been very busy and enjoying every minute of it.
But you're living in New Zealand now? You're in the morning, we're in the evening?
Yeah, that's right. I'm here in New Zealand and it's a beautiful sunny morning, but a little cold because we're going into winter now, just as you're going into the warmer weather. So it's time to put a jacket on.
Well, we have a series of questions, most of them sent in by our audience. However, I will start with one from me. So okay. I was in the front row when you relaunched as Tom Bailey's Thompson Twins at Rewind in 2014. I do remember it very clearly, how quickly you found your stride getting back into it. What was the reason that you came back after 27 years to bring the Thompson Twins music out live? And what was it like coming back, not into a small little intimate gig, but straight in front of a massive music festival crowd?
Well, I mean, it's a series of accidents actually that happened, and I'd fully retired from pop music and certainly from live performance of pop music. But then, and I think almost I was convincing myself that was in the past, and it's not something I was ever going to do. And then by accident, I got involved with working on a pop record with a Mexican musician. And I just enjoyed it so much that I kind of realized that pop music was, one of my things, despite the fact that I was working in all these other areas of music, that it was wrong of me to ignore the pop past in the way that I'd been doing. And so without realizing it, I crossed a line. And then actually Howard Jones called me and said he wanted to go on tour in America and would I like to join him? And it suddenly all made sense, the dotted lines all joined up. And then and so in preparation for that, someone said, do you want to do the Rewind Festival. I had no idea what Rewind was. I said, sure, we'll have a warm up. And of course, the next thing, I'm standing in front of this enormous crowd thinking, oh my gosh, how did I get here? In the words of the song. And it's a funny thing. I mean, I was ill prepared for it, to be honest. After such a long time, I'd forgotten about all that stuff. But it came back to me quickly enough.
It did. I mean, it was obvious the way it started off a little tentative, but then you hit your stride, and it was just like, yeah, this is where I belong. And you started to exude this confidence.
I seem to remember we had some massive technical problem in the first song, which is like a nightmare, when you're coming back after 27 years for the first song to collapse in front of you. But in fact, as you say, once we got into it, it all clicked into place. And, that's partly not just me as a performer, but the fact that the songs are good and worth performing.
Well,
the material is there. So I enjoy doing it, and the crowd enjoys it as well. So
absolutely,
that's the basic ingredient you want to make that, a delicious meal.
Yeah, no, and it works. It works. And I have to say, when establishing a new band to come back with, I would have loved to have seen the advert. Was it something like wanted super hot chicks who look amazing in white, be badass musicians to boot? So why the younger all female? I mean, they are amazing. I love your girls, but what was that a planned thing, or did that happen?
No, again, a total accident. The first thing I did when I realised I was getting into this kind of trouble again was call my old drummer, Jeff Dugmore, and he said, "Yeah, I'll do it." And then at the last minute, he realised he had a clash of dates. He'd already agreed to do some massive shows in Japan or something. And so he suggested Emily Dolan Davis, actually, as the drummer. And I'd already been talking to a female keyboard player at that stage. And so a female band sort of accumulated around the idea. And I thought, this is interesting. And I didn't realise until after we were actually on tour in America what a brilliant idea it was, because I like the kind of energy of working with women, and it's very different from working with men, to be honest. And so since then I just kind of stuck with it as an interesting thing. But there's another reason as well. One of the reasons that the Thompson Twins were a little bit groundbreaking, perhaps, was that we weren't just four guys standing on a stage. Yeah. There was that kind of male-female, black-white thing going on.
Absolutely.
So when you break a mold like that, and you benefit from the interest that generates, again, accidentally, we never intended that, but it just happened that way. Because we were friends. But you realise that it doesn't have to be four white guys, guitar, bass, drums, vocals. You can do pop music other ways.
Absolutely, and it works. It works well.
Yeah.
So Mark has asked,
the band is obviously named after characters in Tintin books. Why is that? Were you a huge Tintin fan when you were younger?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, we're going back to the very early days of the Thompson Twins now, when we were school friends in the north of England, and just coming up with kind of wacky names for a band. And I think we tried several different ones, and that was the one that stuck, because we were all fans of the TV animation first, but also the books as well. And of course, the Thompson Twins in the books were famous for kind of getting it wrong, or in their kind of failed attempt to get it to do something, they accidentally got it right. And we thought, that kind of summed us up as well. We were not musical geniuses, but somehow we got a good sound going.
But somehow the ingredients worked together, and what happened was brilliant. Yeah. So, okay. Well, the next question is from Keith. Keith has asked,
which of your singles are you most proud of, and why?
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, you remember different songs for different reasons, because they kind of fit into a timeline of events, don't they? And so, things like In the Name of Love was the one where I discovered kind of synth dance music as an approach to pop. Love on Your Side is where we finally broke into the charts big time in the UK. I suppose everyone relates very much to Hold Me Now as being the kind of monster international hit, which in some ways was atypical because it wasn't one of those real foot tapping dance space things. But I think by that stage we'd accumulated some kind of songwriting maturity, and we were able to write these kind of more deeply emotional, burdened songs, and it worked. It was just perfect for us.
Absolutely. So from Daisy,
who would be your dream collaboration, past or present?
Well, I do collaborate with lots of people, and I enjoy it thoroughly. It's fantastic to work with all sorts of people, and I guess the question is like, do you have some kind of hero that you haven't yet locked horns with? And one of my favourite bands was the Talking Heads, and I've worked with all the individual Talking Heads apart from David Byrne. So maybe that would be a good answer. I don't know how well that would go. Probably not very well at all. Although recently I've been singing one of their songs actually live, and so I've really enjoyed doing that.
Well, Mick has asked us 2 questions. So the first one, did you write I Want That Man specifically for Debbie Harry? If not, how did it get to be her hit?
Yes, we wrote it for her. In fact, we kind of got together with Deborah and did quite a lot of writing. I think we must have written half a dozen songs together with her. And I think 3 of them made it on the album and a couple on her subsequent work. But we were very pleased that particular song went so well. It became her only solo hit, really, in Europe, and because of course she's known for her work with Blondie.
All the Blondie, yeah.
But wow, what a thing to do! That was a kind of major event.
Amazing to work with her, yeah.
Yeah, and of course she's great, and she's exactly as you'd expect. She's this kind of fabulous New York art punk.
Yeah, exactly.
and very generous, very kind, very funny, and she enjoys what she does.
Oh, lovely. So Mick's second question is, did you contribute backing vocals as well as the synthesizer on Foreigner's I Want to Know What Love Is?
No, I wasn't involved with the vocals. That was already done by a massive choir, a kind of gospel choir. I think by the time I got involved with that session, the backing vocals were in place. And I went in, I think I'd worked with Foreigner a couple of times just because I knew Mick Jones. And when I was in New York, if he was recording, I'd sometimes drop in and, he'd make sure there was a synthesizer waiting, already warmed up for me kind of thing. And that was, he did that with me and with Tom Dolby. He used young European musicians to give a kind of freshness to their big kind of corporate American sound. And I think it was a great idea to have that in their formula, because otherwise it could become too kind of big and lumbering. But that is an enormously kind of well-loved song now. You hear it on the radio all the time. And I always think back to those little keyboard licks that I played. Yeah.
So the next question's from Damien.
Is performing your own material more or less rewarding than singing songs you have written for other artists become hits?
I don't know the answer to that. I mean, they're both thrilling and rewarding in different ways, I guess. It's a strange thing. What does an artist get out? What's the kick that you get out of working at all? It's not just being successful. It's grappling with the problems of it. That's the kind of thing. So it's not that artists are always kind of standing back and admiring how well they've done with their writing or their performance or with other people's work or whatever. It's a more nebulous thing than that. Difficult to put my finger on it, but of course it's all great.
Okay, so we've got a couple of questions from Fran. The first one I love. It reminds me of my time as a teenager. True story. Sister Inez, the head nun in my school, had a meltdown about your single Sister of Mercy, claiming the name was blasphemous and tried to ban everyone in the school from listening to it or buying it. With that in mind, what's the strangest reaction you've ever had to one of your songs?
Well, I think that's got to be up there, sister, and it's well done. My goodness, I've never heard about that before, but it makes me almost proud. You know, obviously, it was never meant to be in any way offensive to the order of nuns who call themselves the Sisters of Mercy, although it obviously the name reflects that in some way. The song was about something completely different, of course, which was crimes of passion, where, you know, basically, I think Alana was saying that judges should bear in mind when someone has been emotionally battered and then snaps and does something they regret later, that it's not the same as just doing it in cold blood. And so a kind of strange subject for a pop song, but it's one of those kind of, in a way, more meaningful songs that we wrote.
Oh, I think the 80s.
In terms of
the 80s got glossed over as being you know, poppy and you know, post 80s it was viewed as an era with very little depth and value. And when you actually go back and look at some of the messages and songs, you know, the political meanings, the passion behind some of it, I think that's why it's so strong now, is that people actually realizing there was so much more depth.
Yes, and it was a golden age of writing, in fact, and of musical experimentation, you know, breaking new ground with new technologies and all that kind of stuff. So yes, we look back at it now, whereas I guess in the 90s, everyone wanted to write off the 80s as just being about the hair and the square shoulders or something, you know, and that's a silly way of looking at any kind of past decade, but. Yeah, I do believe that it was one of the great golden eras of songwriting. And when you think of all those bands that were doing so well at the time and writing songs that we still listen to now, then you know, definitely something was happening.
Very much so. Very much so. Fran's second question is...
I was just wondering, you were very ahead of the curve in that you self-released your initial releases, which of course anybody can do nowadays. They can just put their songs on Spotify or Apple Music or whatever. Are you a fan of this new digital age of music, or do you think that the old system with the hard copy releases was preferable?
Well, I only really know the old school way, to be honest. I mean, I haven't had to kind of break new territory for myself using the streaming and online services. I mean, obviously they have a fantastic reach and they go on forever. You know, you can't delete a Spotify streaming content. Well, I guess you can, but not in the way that when you run out of albums, it gets deleted and you can't buy it anymore. You know? So that's good. The bad thing about it is that the income that artists derive from that is not enough for new artists to put food on the table, so to speak, you know. So I'm fine, I've done my thing and I've done well by it, but I think it's very, very hard for new artists to break through unless they've got an enormous machine behind them and they're doing like a Harry Styles or something, you know, where it's this relentless push through every pot, which must be costing millions, right? So they know that it's worth doing because they're going to make even more millions back. But imagine being, you know, a new band from Dublin, the new Fluorescent Yo-Yos or something, you know, and they don't have the millions to put into it. To be told that being a success on Spotify is the only way to make money kind of kills it.
It is, but it's brought it back to being a live, you know, a live audience market, hasn't it?
It has, and who would have thought that we're all enjoying live music again, which is fantastic.
Nothing wrong with that. So the next question is from Alan. You did say in an interview that neither Joe or Lana are particularly interested in making music anymore. Do you still see them? And if they change their view on that, would you like to perform with them again?
Well, I mean, to be honest, I don't really know because I haven't discussed it with them recently, but I assume not. They don't seem to be showing any signs of wanting to do that. In fact, Alana seemed to be dead against it for a while. And Joe's gone off into different things. I mean, the truth as I see it now is that they had lots of other things they could do, and they've done them. And they are doing them, and they're having a great time. I'm really a musician, you know, that's what I do. I wake up in the morning and I make music. So I'm kind of, in a way, condemned to that as my main area of activity. I can't do anything else. So it's no surprise that I'm carrying on doing it and they're not.
And why did it take then till 2018 to release the solo album Science Fiction? And are there any others on the horizon?
Well, you know, one thing leads to another in this game sometimes. And because I'd gone back and started touring again, then the next question was, you know, do you fancy making another? And of course, I'd been making records all this time, but not pop records. And so I thought, I'll do that. And on the one hand, it came together quite easily. I suddenly started writing, and I mean, in these days as well, everyone records at home, you know, because of computers and things. So I didn't find it that big of a stretch, but the emotional effort almost killed me, to be honest. And so I'm reluctant to just kind of blindly jump into it again. As it happens, I'm writing all the time, you know, I'm writing pop songs all the time. And so when I think that I have the right kind of body of work that leads me in a certain direction, and I can say, yeah, I can make an album around that idea, because there has to be some kind of unifying concept, not necessarily a story that joins all the songs together. But I remember that when I got that song Science Fiction, the title track from my last album, suddenly everything else made sense.
Yeah.
And any problems that we had to solve were done in the light of that making sense. You know, we do it science fiction way, kind of thing. And so, yeah, I'm waiting for that moment.
Okay. So you joined us in our first year in 2019 for the first Forever Young, and you have a history in Ireland. So what can you tell us? What do you enjoy about coming to Ireland? What's special about Ireland that we can look forward to? Sharing with you again this summer?
Well, I mean, I was actually surprised, very pleasantly surprised, to find out that Forever Young takes place in Naas. And I lived actually just down the road from there. I used to go to Naas for my supermarket shopping, you know, so I know the area well. And it's a great pleasure to have an excuse to come back. And I lived in Blessington, which is just not
up the road,
not far down there. Yeah. I loved my time in Ireland. You know, it was a kind of, in a way, it was a difficult time because that was the period just after Joe left the band, and Alana and I were finding a way of doing it as a duo and all the rest of it. But there was something about creating a new home and a new life in Ireland, and having long walks, windswept walks in the Wicklow Mountains and stuff, you know, which made a lot of sense at the time, and so I love all that.
Oh, lovely. Well, we can't wait to have you back in July. And from everybody in Ireland, thank you for joining us for this interview this evening.
You're most welcome. I'm glad we could do that. And as I say, as it gets cooler at the end of the summer here in New Zealand, I'm looking forward to getting over
to the summer.
To you guys. Yeah.
Well, we had a heat wave last year. We had great weather in the first year. So fingers crossed we can give you some sun in July. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Tom Bailey, thank you very much,
Thanks
Tom.
a lot.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
See you soon.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.